It is fatigue after a point that gets to us. We are all suffering from a pandemic fatigue, certainly. 6 months in. Oh. And no end in sight, unfortunately. There is also fatigue that happens when developments are taking place on a borderline area. When the first flashpoint happens, becomes something of national importance. When an unprecedented incident like the loss of life happens, it becomes of national importance. But slowly, the prism of our focus shifts away. News is something new. Another day of patrolling on the LAC, that certainly can't be something different, something new, because it's become routine. And that is exactly what the Chinese are hoping for. That for the rest of us, this becomes routine. We get distracted with all other things that are happening, and maybe even with the rough and tumble of our own lives, and we lose focus as a country and as a people, so that they can make their next move. There are two sets of people who cannot lose that focus. Those are the Jawans on the ground, allowing us to be worried about other things, and the diplomats who are tasked with trying to save as many lives on the ground by coming to diplomatic resolutions. And now, India's senior most person involved in this, which happens to be S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, has made the most direct statement where he says we have to have faith in the army on the ground. We continue to talk, but don't presuppose what is going to take place. Let's have a faith in the army on the ground, which is a measure then of the conversation we need to quickly have. Joining us, I have Ambassador Basudeb Mukherjee, General Shashi Asthana joining us, Joyita Basu and Sumit Peer. General Asthana, now it is a cliche to say that we have faith in the army, we trust in the army, we say it often and we mean it. But for the Foreign Affairs Minister to say that let's have faith in the army on the ground is a more subtle reflection that actually the army has done a really good job to strengthen our diplomacy.
Certainly, the army has made some moves which have been appreciated and which have put the diplomacy at stronger wickets when it came to negotiations. But I would like to point out few other things. As far as we are concerned as professionals, as military, notwithstanding what happened in talks, notwithstanding what the 5-point agreement says, we have no intention of believing the Chinese, and therefore, as professional, I would like to say that I assume that they are not going back. I assume that they may bring more force if the situation so demands. I assume that they can try and get back some of the heights which we have captured, and therefore we have to be prepared accordingly. Now the focus of our operation is going to shift from tactical side to the logistic sides as well. Now both become important. As far as logistics is concerned, we know as the winters approach, the side which is better prepared logistically to sustain itself will have an upper edge. So that is another focus which is opening up. The next thing which I want to highlight is, notwithstanding those 5-point program to say, okay, we will follow the CBMs. The fact is, hereafter, the Jawans cannot be devoid of this right to self-defense. And therefore, there is no question of a firefight or a fight of the kind which we saw in Galwan. If the Chinese come dangerously close to us, the Jawans have to be allowed to fire for effect. And fire for effect is a right of every citizen in the country, even under IPC, when his life is threatened.
Well, self-defense.
So therefore,
self-defense. How important just to do this in a linear way, Sumit Peer, to identify that tactical superiority is crucial to diplomatic superiority, as has been defined by the ambassador, to say that we have faith in the army. Yes, we have faith. Like I said, there's a difference between the actuality and the talk. This is about having faith in the army to handle the situation, to put India in an advantage, not simply lay down their lives. We had faith in the army in 62 also. But in the end, they died because of bad political decisions, bad equipment, bad management, bad leadership. This time it's different.
I think, Rishabh, this time around it's completely different because Jaishankar ji told there are three things we are working on. Political will is there. Diplomatically, we are doing what we can do, and we have the boots on the ground. So it's a combination of three factors. It's not one factor alone. Point number two, Rishabh, you are looking at a snake. Snake does not, bite you because he hates you, because that is what his nature is. He's designed by nature to do that. So China is exactly in the same situation. Trusting China is like trusting a venomous snake who is bound to bite us because that is what his nature is. Another pertinent point here is that today we are at a position where we can dictate our terms. If we leave our tactical advantage, we'll be at a big loss. When you talk to adversary like China, you have to talk with a loaded gun on your table. That is what exactly the Indian military is doing. And what did the Honorable Prime Minister say in Ladakh? He said only strong can maintain peace. And this comes from Sri Bhagavad Gita, wherein Krishna said thousands of years back, only powerful can maintain peace. Even at times to maintain peace, you might have to fight.
Okay, so this boils down to Joyita Basu, it just boils down to now approaches, right? It was not the capacity or the capability, it was the approach. The approach was that if the Chinese interceded or intervened onto Indian soil, our first conversation would be a diplomatic conversation, and we may or may not respond on the LAC. Now the approach is our first response is on the LAC, and then we may or may not have a diplomatic conversation. The approach pivot, how important is it going ahead?
I think this is a significant change if you look at it, because you see what is happening is that even for that matter, even Mr. Jaishankar has been talking about diplomatic solution, but at the same time maybe the Chinese can be made to see reason. But I think even the establishment realizes, not even the establishment realizes very well that that is not the way forward. It is not going to happen because China is not going to change. You see, whenever China, soon after this 5-point so-called statement that was given, which was, by the way, full of cliches, and in reality there was nothing happening, and because it has no relationship with what the ground, it was not reflecting the ground situation.
Correct.
Soon after that, China talked about we are committed to peace, but we are also committed to our territorial integrity.
No, it was pointless. That was an agreement for the sake of having an agreement.
Integrity, what does it mean? That the current standoff that is going on. So how do you deal with with a power like that? How do you deal with China like that? Diplomacy is not the solution.
No, but are we, Joyita, the question I was asking was, are we now in a phase where we have recognized that talking to China without actually doing something means nothing? It's completely meaningless. You have to hold the position on the ground, improve the position on the ground, reverse the tactics on the Chinese. You can also talk, but we are not relying on those talks alone.
I think that change has come about, I would say, because you see, if it had not come about, we would have given away too much on the negotiating table. When we were discussing with China, we would have possibly given up 3 hikes. That has not happened. So perhaps that has sunk in.
Okay. General Asthana, I know, hindsight is always 20/20 and it's always easy to talk. But every time we look at the hard-won strategic and tactical advantages that we have then mucked up on the negotiating table, you can easily examine what happened in 1947, hard-won tactical and strategic advantage at the cost of many lives, many braves, some who died to the last man, under then Lieutenant General Cariappa, given away at the negotiating table. 71 million POWs surrounded Lahore, given away. We didn't even settle the LOC issue, given away at the negotiating table. Have we learned that lesson now, so that our children will not be having this conversation?
Certainly, because we have landed on the wrong side of history by making such kind of decisions, wherein, in fact, some you counted, some more are even more important. Like we recognizing Tibet without even forcing China to accept the boundary. So this is, and this is what we are paying for. So these are some historic mistakes. and certainly we should not repeat that. Now, when I say we should not repeat, let me be specific, because nowadays it is basically battle of specifics. There is a adversary in front of us, and therefore now we are being a little more specific. As far as the both shoulders of Spangur Gap is concerned, we must not give them at all. As far as Depsang is concerned, it is a concern to us. We have to get it back in some manner or the other. And therefore, as I visualize, there will be probing actions, there will be tussle or tug of war to gain better tactical heights, so that you
which is
are
fine.
even
No, which is
stronger
fine,
in
and
the
that's
negotiating
what
position.
we're saying. That's exactly what needs to happen. But in the past, let's say 2 or 3 months, the talks have been on. The talks have been at the highest level, phone call level, summit level, meeting level. Let's go to Moscow level. We've had, other than the Prime Minister's PM talking to the President of China, all sorts of levels of communications have happened. But have you seen anything in the past 3 or 4 months, sir, that has indicated that we have given up on the negotiating table what we have won on the ground?
No, we have not. But I was referring to basically those couple of 2 lines, like we must honor the CBMs, or we both sides agreed to honor the CBM as one of the point of 5-point agreement. Now that I don't visualize that is
okay, so it's meaningless. So basically we haven't made the cardinal error this time of the Chinese move in 10 kilometers, then offer to go back 3, still sitting on 7 kilometers, and we negotiate this and we consider it as a victory. This error has not happened this time, which is so important, Sumit Peer. Herein lies the change, because the to and fro with China is going to continue for decades, right? There might be mini conflicts, mini wars. The same thing applies to Pakistan. The to and fro will continue for decades, but something fundamental change with the surgical strike.
Correct.
That yes, the to and fro continues. Yes, you will try to infiltrate, we will try to stop you. But this time we will not only try to stop you, we will preempt you and hit you.
Correct.
This logic change are we seeing happening on the line of actual control?
I think, Rishabh, it is quite obvious. You see, how did we respond to the Chinese so-called aggression? The first thing was not talks, was not going to UN, was not crying about it, was not being the crybabies. We started moving our troops, and we moved troops and artillery in lakhs. So that is the point number 1. Point number 2, the Honorable Prime Minister going to the Leh and calling China an expanded power from the surface, from the ground zero. That is point number 2. Point number 3 is diplomacy was kept as a track 2. It was not the track 1. Mr. Jaishankar can engage, we can talk at HCO, we can do all other things, but we are reinforcing our positions. Point number 4, we took the tactical heights while the diplomacy was going on, while this all was going on. So these 4 things, and we getting the international, 5th thing was we getting the international community walk the talk with us. We have the French defense minister coming for the induction of Rafales. We have Russians giving us all the arms and ammunition we need. You know, we have this pact to Japan, the military pact. We have US-Maldives pact happening. So all these are happening.
So it's an approach change. Okay, Joyita Basu.
And US Armada has moved to South China Sea on our behest to support us if there is an eventuality that they need.
Joyita Basu, the Treaty of Versailles logic applies. Okay, you can argue in hindsight that being too tough and not having diplomatic room does not augur well for the future sometimes. That's what happened in 1918. But simply negotiating every time without actually winning anything on the ground also impacts us. What impacts us worse is when you win it on the ground with blood, soil, sweat and tears, and then give it away. Have we gone past the era where we are no longer seeing a Simla Accord where we hand over 1 million POWs for nothing in return?
Yeah, for that matter, even 1965, what happened, we gave up the Haji Pir Pass, you know, in the Tashkent Declaration, and that was one of the, when Shastri died after that, you know, during that particular trip.
In mysterious circumstances,
we
yes.
have committed innumerable mistakes like that. Perhaps one reason is that our political leadership all these years, perhaps because of the way Pakistan turned out, there has been an aversion to listen to the military, you know, because there has always been this fear about, you know, of a coup. And the thing is that they never realized. So that is one of the reasons why military was never allowed to come into as a decision-making force. So I think that has changed. At least now inputs are being taken from the military. As General Asthana said, we are not going to give up that Spangur gap and those heights around them. If this, this particular realization has sunk into the establishment, and it seems
okay.
it
So
has,
now let me.
So it is very important.
Okay. So now let me.
Can I make one more
finish
point,
your thought. Go ahead.
The thing is, you see, it's not every day the country's defense minister goes to parliament and says China does one thing and says one thing and does one thing. We have always been very circumspect about saying anything publicly.
Because we always
China.
bought what they've said.
We've
said we love you so much that everything that comes out is honey and sugar from your mouths when is anything but that. But the question I wanted to ask Joyita Basu is that let's reverse the perspective. When we do a surgical strike, okay, and we say, okay, our intent and our logic is going to be different. When the Pakistanis are observing this change, they are now having to adapt to it. The Chinese are now observing this change, that something different is happening. We, as Sumit Peer has said, our first response was not to go out crying. Our first response was say, we are going to take you on, right? And yes, you've come in, we should have not let you come in, but this time we're going to hold firm and do our best to push you back out, not by going crying to the UN like we did in 47, or sit on a negotiating table. In Moscow, it was tough talk with the defense ministers, practical talk within the foreign ministers, we gave up nothing. What is the counter logic? How the Chinese are viewing it? How are they going to be adapting to this?
Well, the Chinese, from all accounts, the Chinese are surprised. The Chinese are in fact shocked. You see, what has happened is that, they still have, because you see, when you look at the way that Chinese talk about, if you read the kind of stuff they spew, if you read their Global Times and all, they have gone to a level where it seems like it is a post-truth kind of a situation. They have spun so many lies that they have started believing in those. And I think you add the Pakistani angle to it, the Pakistanis have tried enough lies to them that these people are, that is what the Pakistan narrative is, these people are Hindus, they cannot fight, all sorts of things have been, and Pakistan has a huge influence on China's India policy, by the way. So you see, all sorts of notions the Chinese had about we being weak and all. So what has happened, China is in a state of shock with what they have seen at Galwan, and
but
now what they are seeing.
I'm forever curious on what the adaptation would happen, because now we have to get ready for the next thing. They're going to try something. They're not sit on their hands. They might wait a little bit, but something is going to happen. Shashi Asthana, the ability of the Chinese to come up with devious responses is definitely at least at par or even better than the Pakistanis. Now they have realized that there is a new normal in operation, that you simply can't waltz in until resistance is met and then say, and then poo-pah it, make a new map, and then sit and have 20 years of negotiations over it. That this is a new normal. How do you suspect that they will adapt to it?
Firstly, strategically as well as tactically, I'll cover it both ways. As far as tactically, they would try and do probing actions, and they won't stop it. Their actions are going to be there, and even if there is a lull, that is an indicative of their planning and preparation for an action of this kind. And so therefore we have to be prepared for it. As far as the strategic part is concerned, they will do the perception game. Now this perception game for their domestic audiences, October, they have got a preliminary session coming up. Xi Jinping would like to tell the communist CCP that, see, I have gained fair amount of territory. If you see the kilometerage, I have got much more. And when Jaishankar came here, I have also made him sign that, okay, no more troops build up and no more changing of status quo. So, all in all, I think I have done a good job. So, therefore, don't unnecessarily cry that that India has given me a rebuff. So, that would be his strategy as far as the perception battle is concerned.
Okay.
Now, as far as on ground is concerned, when it comes to the strategic part, both sides will have to prepare now for winters, because now winters, whatever you do, even if you gain something to hold it, you require a preparation, you require a winterization of that particular operation. So therefore, a fair amount of effort towards building up that is going to is going to take place, and that is also time consuming.
Okay, so I'm
I
just
think
wondering
both sides would be ready
if you're
for doing
observing
that.
this out of Beijing, sir, and you're saying, okay, let us now use attrition. Let us tire out the Indians. I don't know. There's an echo happening. If somebody's got the TV on or something. Let us tire out the Indians. Let us use attrition. Let us try to become, let's be more patient than them. Our positions, let's say, for example, on Siachen, what does that indicate on the level of our resilience and our patience to hold on to something despite the cost and the difficulty of holding on to it?
Our resolve and patience is much more, it is very well tested. Their patience and resolve to hold on such heights is not tested so far. So, as a professional, I would say, certainly we have confidence in our resolve, but let's not underestimate somebody else's resolve also, because as a professional, you be prepared for the worst. But notwithstanding that, objectively speaking, we have proved it to the world that we can hold Siachen under all kinds of adverse conditions. And today we are in a much better position. Initially, we had
so what are you saying? Are you saying that if we can hold Siachen, okay, and there have been from times of Musharraf onwards, there have been multiple attempts to wrest it from us. We can hold Spangor, we can hold the heights, we can hold Galwan.
Certainly, we can hold all these. And also, let me also tell you that at some point of time, our political leadership was also thinking of negotiating that can we come down from Siachen. And at that point of time, I think the military hierarchy was very strong that after so much of bloodshed, once we have gone in there, we cannot give away those heights, and perhaps at that point of time, the military.
So then comes to the last aspect of this. If the realization in China is that we are not going anywhere, we won't vacate those heights in winters for you to walk in, like in Kargil. So that's not going to happen. Even next year, we'll be there, and the level of our mobilization, if need be, will remain the same, if not be higher, because it gives us another 1 year to re-equip, rearm, bring in supplies that we haven't got right now positioned. Then it becomes that, okay, if we want to go forward, there will be a cost to us going. So far, there was no cost. There will be a cost. You learned the cost in Galwan. In this case, when the Chinese start computing costs, General Sinha, I'm sure their generals will be sitting, General Asana, their generals will be sitting and say, okay, if you want to remove the Indians from this height, the cost in lives, in the equipment and ammunition and time is going to be this much. How more difficult does that make Xi Jinping's decision?
It will make his decision very difficult. I don't think he is much bothered about the cost in terms of money, but he is certainly bothered about the cost in terms of lives. Because till now, PLA is not used to seeing the body bags. And the way they responded to the casualties of Galwan, it is quite indicative that they have a problem at hand. And this is something which perhaps PLA is not used to it. They actually got emboldened because they made a lot of gains in South China Sea without fighting.
Yeah.
So they thought that the same thing can be replicated here. And that's what I keep saying, incremental enforcement strategy being replicated in this area as well.
Okay.
Now they know that there is a cost to pay. If you move forward, there is a cost.
There's a cost to pay. And the cost is, okay, so Sumit Peer, now that there is a cost to pay, how many, if Xi Jinping makes a decision, and he might, right, that it is important for my political priorities, and he has his own political priorities, he's got to save his own ass, he's got to report back in 2021 of the great things he's done, because the country is about Xi Jinping thought now. He has achieved nothing rather than pandemic, economic destruction, potential famine, and antagonizing the rest of the world. It's not a very happy report card. So if he says, okay, I want to do it, how many deaths in Galwan, if he covered up 100, how many deaths can he cover up with the Chinese people? Is the capacity to cover up how large within communist China?
I think, Rishabh, it's not a question of covering up the deaths. It's the question of his facade being dismantled. He had a big piece of his facade being broken in Galwan, which he was able to hide the rubble. But if he comes and tries to take on India, this time the rubble will be so much that is beyond his capacity to hide. So the world will know PLA is good for nothing. The people of China will know. And the most important thing, what the world will know, that Indians have taught them a lesson. India has put them in a box. So that is what he cannot afford, because he has lost on economy, he has lost on trust, he has lost on power, he has lost on trade, he has lost on everything. Now the last nail in his coffin will be if India dismantles this last standing facade of PLA, wherein he put hundreds of billions of dollars to modernize it. His hand-picked generals are there which are not able to deliver, and he's himself the top boss of the PLA. So now is PLA really the People's Liberation Army, or it is the propaganda and lobbying arm of CCP, Chinese Communist Party? That is a gamble which I don't think he will be willing to take. But as you go for the intelligence inputs, Rishabh, all the intelligence agencies are indicating before October 30th, he might go for the last push. This might be a tactical push only. He needs to draw a military victory back home, which he can proud or at least
I think
rejoice
there is pretty much consensus that in October they're going to try something. Okay. The scale of it, of course, intelligence will have a better idea than you and me sitting here on television channels. But that seems to be the consensus, that before winter finally closes, that he's going to try to strengthen their positions so that he can go back. The reason for the Joyita Basu is that you can, of course, fool and lie to the Chinese people. It's far more difficult for him to fool and lie to his own enemies, competitors within the Politburo, within who's remaining in the PLA despite the purges. And if it turns out to be a disaster for the PLA, some of that mud will stick on Xi Jinping's face as well.
Well, ahead of 2049, when it's going to be the centenary of the Chinese communists coming to power, and even for that matter, in the short term, in the next 1 or 2 years, Xi Jinping needs a victory, a quick victory, and that victory, where that victory is going to come from, we don't know. He is hoping to get one either in India, or there could be Taiwan, or could be Australia. But at the same time, as we have been writing in the Sunday Guardian, I mean, there is a very strong chance that there are conflict. It's actually not a question of if a conflict between India and China happen, it's a question of when it will happen. Yes, in the short term, we can talk about, say, October 30th, or in the longer term, maybe again next year, because the way that nature of China is such, and basically Xi Jinping is on an, I would say, overreach drive. So, I mean, Xi Jinping will go for a military conflict sooner or later, so we have to be prepared for that. But at the same time, if you look at it, as I totally agree with Sumit, when he's talking about the propaganda part of it, it's not just about quantity, it's also about quality. Qualitatively, what kind of, soldiery, their army has, we don't know as yet. They are untested. Totally.
Okay, is there enough resolve now? I don't doubt it within, for a moment within the Indian army. But in this country, where, let's face it, very often we start seeing political fault lines emerge. If you just push, suddenly the political fragmentation will start taking place. Joyita Basu, is there enough resolve? Because the counter applies. If the Chinese will have to pay a cost, they will try their best to make India incur a cost also, assuming that our body bag syndrome is going to be far worse than theirs. Is there resolve here within the larger country, Joyita Basu, to deal with it?
I think what we are witnessing, Rishabh, is that you see three things which we have been discussing on and off on NewsX. First of all, there is political will, there is military will and military capability, and there is public support. Public support to take on China. And the thing is, you see, if we are talking about mounting body bags or whatever, the thing is that let us not assume that it is going to be ours will be more. Because you see, this is not 1962. And if you are going to talk about, say memory, there are regimental memory, as Shashi, as Major General Asthana will be able to tell you, that, they remember, we have to avenge. There is enough resolve inside the army itself to avenge what happened in 1962. So I don't think that is going to be a problem. We have seen what happened in Kargil. We saw the way the country came together to support our soldiers. And and we are not the aggressors. They are the aggressors. You cannot let them, let them take away our territory. It does not work like that. China has to learn a lesson.
Okay, I've got a couple of minutes left. General Asthana, we are dealing with, let's face it, unpredictable and erratic and irrational people right now. Pakistanis are one and the Chinese are, let's face it, no better. in this particular environment, what do we tell our people? Because nobody wants a war. We don't want a single soldier to die anywhere. But if somebody had stopped Hitler in Munich with just a couple, when 2 or 3 people died in the coup that failed in Munich, maybe 60 million people could have been saved. How do we have this very difficult conversation on facing up to China?
I think my clear message would be, certainly we don't want a war. We also don't want our soldiers to die. But as a professional army, the territorial integrity to us comes first, always and every time. And our soldiers come second, and our own ease and comfort as officers comes last. This is what we are taught in IMA, and that is what is called as IMA Credo. But let me tell you that I have served with Chinese and I have served with Pakistani military both in United Nations. And I understand what are their pluses and minuses. As far as Pakistanis are concerned, certainly they have moved towards the governance model, and their hierarchy is more interested in governance and less interested in profession. Their soldiers are reasonably okay, but the problem is of the leadership. As far as Chinese are concerned, the soldiers have also gone into a fair amount of luxury. Now these are pros and cons, but you have exceptions as well. There have been a couple of very good Chinese officers and there have been a couple of very good Chinese soldiers as well, which I have come across. So the question is, as professional army, we will have to give any enemy his due, be ready for everything, and we don't count or we don't have this factor in our mind that how many body bags or how many casualties we will suffer or otherwise. As far as we are concerned, we are there for territory and we are there to defend our country, and that is the last bottom line.
But it is a sobering thought.
Part, it doesn't appear to us.
But it is a sobering thought, and it will require such sober thoughts going ahead. Before winter closes, assume and presume the worst, even as we hope for the best. Yeah, okay, Sumit, 10 seconds, go ahead.
Rishabh, there is no cost of protecting your motherland. That is the first thing. This time around, there's a major difference. Earlier, army was supposed to take orders, but this time around, army is being consulted by the political dispensation, and then the decisions are taken. So this is a new
No, there is a cost.
Handling the entity. Because there was a beautiful article in Sunday Guardian edited by Joyita ji, where it was written, Modi ji told the general there, what can you do? Don't tell me what Chinese can do. Tell me aap kya kar sakte ho aur aap jaake kariye. That is the winning strategy. That is the winning approach.
There is a cost.
And that is good.
There is always a cost, but too often in the country we've let the people on the front line bear the cost, and we've written away, signed off everything they've won in hard fight. I know the logic of the Treaty of Versailles applies in terms of understanding what can be negotiated and what shouldn't be, but in this case at least we are acting first and negotiating later, which is probably the right strategy. But nonetheless, let's hope it doesn't get worse, but let's be prepared for if it doesn't.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.